Welcome back to Green is Good, and we're so honored to have Chris Erickson, who's the CEO and co-founder of Climate Earth, on with us. Today, Climate Earth is a leading provider of business intelligence systems and consulting for sustainable management. Welcome to Green is Good, Chris Erickson.
Thank you, John. That's a great introduction. I'm delighted to be here and delighted to be on the show.
You know, Chris, we have never had the pleasure of meeting yet in person or even on our show. And so since you're a first-time guest and you're doing some great and wonderful work, I want you to first, before we get into any questions about your business model, please share a little bit how you got here and your journey to Climate Earth.
I'd be happy to. Most of my career, John, was in computers and enterprise software. Back in the day, I now consider myself kind of an escapee from Silicon Valley. I've been a VP and division manager at a Fortune 500. I've been CEO of some high-tech startups, including an IPO of a data analysis company. Kind of an early pioneer in what we now call big data.
Right.
And decision making, which has really been a passion in my career. And then I've actually been at the life cycle analysis and environmental analysis focus for quite a while now. It's been almost 7 years. And we're building the market that we call environmental business intelligence. That is helping companies look at their environmental impacts through life cycle analysis, but combining that with sort of a big data, web-based systems, and bringing environmental impacts and analysis up to the sort of enterprise level.
Chris, does that mean for laymen like me, does that mean what's measurable becomes manageable, and that's what you're doing? You're gathering all the data to make it more measurable, so therefore the people can manage against it?
Yeah, I think that's really true. In really simple terms, companies, we saw a lot of big companies using spreadsheets to try and manage their environmental impacts, and you'd never manage a big company with a spreadsheet.
Right.
So we saw these big companies have these huge levers and opportunities for change and improving their business and their bottom line by focusing on their environmental impacts, but they lacked the infrastructure to manage sustainably and realize that potential, and that's why we started Climate Earth.
Got it. And for our listeners out there, I'm on Chris's great website right now. I encourage you to go there. It's www.climateearth.com. It's very comprehensive, and there's a lot of great information there. Chris, go back to what you said, supply chain environmental reporting. What does that really mean, and can you elaborate on the meaning of that and what it should mean to our listeners out there that own small and large businesses?
Yeah, sure. A lot of companies have been focusing on their impacts inside the four walls. That is, the energy they use to run their plants and their electricity and even their commuting. But if you look at a company that makes and builds a physical product that or manufactures something,
right,
about 80%, typically sometimes greater, is out in the supply chain and occurs based on the choices they make from the materials they select and the suppliers they select. So looking not only inside the four walls, but at the supply chain is enormous leverage for companies. It's kind of like managing the food you intake. What you make your products out of is what your products become. And so managing the environmental impacts of the supply chain is strategic because of the quality and impact of your products, but also it's where the leverage is, about 80%, as I said. So that's where we've been focusing our business on that sort of complex big data problem, modeling and managing the supply chain impacts.
In the literature and on your website, I read this new term that I've never seen before, environmental product declarations, or EPDs. What is, what's going on with this new terminology, and what does that mean to entrepreneurs and bigger legacy businesses that are out there now?
Now that EPDs is a sort of technical term, environmental product declarations, as you said. It's really an environmental product label. It's analogous to a nutrition label.
Okay.
Today you'll go out and you'll see products with sort of green stamps of approval and green leaves on them, and they're basically some organization has said, well, if you do these things, we'll put our green label on you.
Right.
And consumers sort of have to trust what that is.
Yeah.
The idea of an environmental product declaration is to give the consumer sort of just the facts. Here's the calories. Well, here's the greenhouse gas impact of making this product. Here's
right.
the ozone depletion. I think it's where we're going to go. I mean, the fundamental measure when you're buying a product is knowing its performance characteristics. I mean, if you buy a car, you look at miles per gallon.
Sure.
If you buy a cup of coffee, you want small, medium, or large. And so this comes to giving the consumer the information they need to make smart choices.
But Chris, when we were growing up, our moms bought things that had the good housekeeping seal of approval. What is going to emerge as the EPD good housekeeping seal of approval, and which are not going to make it? Is there such a thing? Is there a jockeying and a horse race now for one EPD to emerge, or is this going to be on a multiple basis?
This is going to be on a multiple basis. So the core idea of an EPD, like a nutrition label, is to do two things. One, sort of level the playing field, so a company can't run out and put a green stamp of approval that's sort of randomly on their product.
Okay.
But it's designed so that consumers can compare like products' environmental impact. There's a fairly lengthy process called a product category rule that sets up the rules which a particular category will compare itself on. We just went through one for the construction industry on concrete, of all things.
Okay.
And it's a pretty long stakeholder process where industry participants, academics, look at the life cycle data and decide sort of what are the 4 or 5 key things we need to measure, and how do we make sure we measure those in a fair way, and then release the industry to go produce labels and compete on a level playing field. There are some problems with this. I mean, pretty significant ones that I think are being overcome. The one I called the problem of scale, and the other is complexity for the consumer. The scale problem is because the typical life cycle analysis is pretty labor-intensive and manual today.
Right.
Companies are starting to sort of cluster their like products together and label them. So, and it makes the LCA analysis process simpler, but it's sort of like putting this, walking in the grocery store and saying, well, all condiments are the same, so we'll put the same nutrition label on ketchup and mustard.
Right.
And that doesn't make any sense. And so I think that direction isn't going to work. We've got to be more scalable and get down to the individual product level and make comparisons.
Got it.
For the consumer. And then the complexity one, once we have the labels with scale,
right.
I don't see a solution other than to educate the consumer base about what they mean. When I was a kid, like you said, I didn't know anything. We didn't have much nutrition labels on product. We didn't have
right.
worry about sugar and stuff like that. And we've learned how to at least realize that that's important. And I think the same thing's going to have to happen with environmental impacts.
Chris, one of the things we like to do on the show is talk about the problems and issues that we have, in the current times we live in, but also the solutions. And obviously, you're a solution provider. Can you share, without giving up any secret sauce or without breaking any confidentialities, can you share with our listeners how you work with companies and give a couple of prototype examples of what your firm does? And for our listeners out there who just joined us, we're on the line right now with Chris Erickson, who's the CEO of Climate Earth, and you can see his great website and his great work at climateearth.com. Can you give us a couple of examples so our listeners can really say, aha, now I get what he's doing?
Yeah. So I'll do that in just a moment.
Sure.
I want to step back just one moment first and tell you a little bit about the problem, a little bit more about the problem we're trying to solve. When we looked at the environmental management and measurement, we saw a lot of companies out there working with spreadsheets and doing sort of isolated random acts of goodness, measuring inside their 4 walls.
Right.
We didn't see this broad-based system of management like that you have for financial management. And being kind of systems guys and big data people, we realized that we thought there was three sort of fundamental requirements for a successful system. One was what we call coverage, that is looking at all the environmental impacts of a company, not just one or two, so that you can make smarter strategic decisions. The second was, having run a big company, I realized that you can't run an organization with two rudders.
Right.
And the big rudder is the financial system. So we needed to connect in or merge with the financial system so you could make environmental decisions in financial context.
Right.
That sounds sort of, what I mean by that is look at product line profit versus greenhouse gas emissions. And if you think energy prices are going up, then if you have low margins and high greenhouse gas, you might want to redesign that product.
Got it.
And the last thing was scale. That is making sure that we can scale environmental management as effectively as we scale financial systems. So, what we found is that the companies that we work with tend to be medium to large scale and a lot of leaders today. And sometimes I'm just amazed. Not all leaders are obvious. One of our sort of medium-sized but big company is a concrete company called Central Concrete out here in California.
Okay.
They looked at the concrete business, and by the way, I should say that concrete is the sidewalk you walk on. Some people call that cement. Cement is the glue that holds the concrete together, the gravel together. And cement is 5% of the U.S. environmental footprint, greenhouse gas footprint. And they looked at that and said, is the future of concrete going to be pure cement-based? It doesn't make any sense. Because 1 ton of cement adds 1 ton of CO2 to the atmosphere, the making of 1 ton.
Wow. I didn't realize that.
So they decided that there was a huge business opportunity and an environmental opportunity to invest in clean, green concrete, and not only put a laboratory in place to design new mixes, but to be able to communicate the impacts that they're having quantitatively to the client and to their customers, architects and big buyers of buildings.
Right.
And the result is that they put together an environmental business intelligence system with us, and it takes all their business systems data, everything, the material that goes into their products, their pricing and cost, their performance attributes like the compressive strength of concrete, mixes that in with the environmental data, and now they have online access to every single one of their 3,000 or so concrete mixes.
Wow.
They can go into contractors and owners and talk about not only, concrete is a simple product, but compressive strength. If you're building a bridge, it's got to be 12,000 psi. But they can put right in with that similar mixes that have same performance requirements, and the customer can look at the environmental performance, the EPD, at the same time and make informed decisions. It's a full system. It's become part of their management, reporting, marketing externally, and the laboratory uses the data to design new mixes. So it's really a full. I think it's the way of the future for business.
No kidding. And is the feedback from most of your clients? I mean, first of all, let me just step back here. When did you start Climate Earth?
Oh, I didn't mention that. We started Climate Earth back in 2008.
Okay. So compare today, and of course, those were some tough times that we all lived through in 2008 in terms of the business environment. But compare today, we're here in 2013, Chris, compared to 2008. What is now the what is the uptake and what is the business environment in terms of looking for your services and adopting your services and your great technology and your great comprehensive, holistic approach to sustainability? How is that going?
It's really, we've really seen an uptick in the last couple of years. Last year was our best year ever, and I think that's going to happen again this year. Another great year. The companies have really changed. I mean, to be honest, back in 2008, a lot of companies thought we were the kooks from California trying to measure supply chain impact.
Yeah.
And now the Fortune 100 we're working with Fortune 100 companies who are coming to us and say, can you help us shape and manage a longer-term strategy? Can you help us? Our supply chain is $25 billion in spend. We cover 60-plus countries. Where do we focus? And we're able to help them answer that question and give them a system that provides long-term guidance and measurements across the biggest impacts that they're making.
And I'm
a world of difference.
And that's great. And Chris, I'm so impressed with what you're doing and this whole notion of EPDs and probably, as you said, going to be the future wave. Who's your competition? I haven't heard of any other company that does this, and I'm in the industry. I'm in the environmental and the recycling industry. Do you have 10 competitors, 50 competitors, no competitors? How does that look, that landscape?
Well, I'd love to say we don't have any competitors, but we have lots of competitors, different ilks.
Okay.
There's lots of ways to sort of slice the sustainability pie.
Right.
We have competition from in-house life cycle analysis, sort of do it by hand, hire your own staff. We have competition from companies that go out and hire somebody to do a single LCA. I mean, that's money that's going into trying to solve the sustainability problem, which I think is great in some ways.
Right.
We also have software companies that we compete with, and we are, I think, a little bit unique in that we're sort of this merger of both software and data and big data. We're focused on this big data problem, which is pretty unique. I think I'm probably the only lifecycle consulting company that has a chief systems architect and that has a team of people with backgrounds in big data management and analysis, as well as life cycle analysis, and that tends to make us a little bit unique today.
Well, speak about that a little bit. We're down to the last 2-3 minutes or so, but I want you to continue to go in that direction, Chris, in that you came out of technology. First of all, you are an entrepreneur and you're also an operator. You have been historically, so you sat in the business's shoes that you're now talking with and trying to have them adopt your systems. But you also are a person who's, envelops and embraces technology. How also do you work closely with academia to set your products apart and differentiate yourself from other competitors out there?
That's a really important point. This is a market that's really developing, and a lot of big companies are turning to academia to help and get advice, and we've done the same thing to keep our products on the leading edge. We're working very closely with a project at the University of Minnesota right now, a new project to develop cutting-edge, sort of leading-edge tools for supply chain management. We have a close relationship with UC Berkeley, where we've done some joint projects. And we're also forming a relationship with Carnegie Mellon University to advance the state-of-the-art. I think these are really strategically important for us, and they give us an opportunity to work with academia and put those latest advances into our products. And we give them a platform of data to do their research. So it's worked out very, very well for us.
That's great. And, Chris, we're down to the last minute or so. Talk about the future of Climate Earth and where is your company going? When you come on our show next time, where are you going to be?
One of the things that I'm just really fascinated by is it came out in Brazil and at the last climate conference late last year or mid last year. It was this notion of natural capital accounting. That is, we saw 50 countries and 86 private companies join forces behind the idea of measuring the dollar impact of their their activities in the environment. The idea of putting a financial value on your environmental impacts. Wow. So the notion is you can do an LCA and understand your ozone depletion, but how do you dollarize that? How much is that externality worth? $25 million. And how much is your GHG impact? $40 million. And all of a sudden you start to have all your environmental impacts in dollar form and executives can understand that and begin to make trade-offs, more refined trade-offs. So I see natural capital accounting as being an emerging sort of next generation of environmental management, where companies are actually monetizing their environmental impacts, putting a dollar value on them, and using those dollar values to guide their business strategically.
Well, Chris, we're going to have you back on Green is Good. Go out and look at his site, climateearth.com. Call him up and use his services. Chris Erickson, you are a visionary sustainability leader and truly living proof that green is good.